adjourn. Peter Aldous.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Earlier this month, on 3rd of May, I helped unveil a timeline on Lowestoft Station, the UK's most easterly station, to mark the 175th anniversary of the railway arriving in the town. Lowestoft is the end destination for the East Suffolk line and one of two for the Wherry line, with the other being Great Yarmouth. They are routes that serve the most easterly points in the UK, which are now hubs for sustainable energy, manufacturing, engineering, hospitality, and hopefully a revised fishing industry. The timeline reveals a long and illustrious past. But looking to the future, if we make the right decisions and secure the right investment now, we can bring major benefits and job opportunities to communities all along the two lines in both East Suffolk and East Norfolk. The two railways pass through and are close to communities assessed by Transport East as being transport deserts, where there are few realistic alternatives to the private car. Mr Deputy Speaker, passenger numbers on both lines have recovered well from COVID, particularly leisure-based travel. In April 2022, the numbers on both lines were up 19% on the equivalent period in 2019. In recent years, some significant improvements have been made to the services on both lines, but there is so much more that can be done and considerable scope for further enhancement. It should be borne in mind that the journey time from Lowestoft to Ipswich is now longer than when this service was first provided in 1859. In the past, the East Suffolk and Wherry lines have brought considerable benefits to the area, serving and supporting residents, facilitating trade and business, and promoting tourism. The arrival of the railways was very much a catalyst for bringing prosperity to the area. Today, the railway can play the same role as it did 175 years ago in a number of different ways. Enhance services, improve connectivity. This is particularly important in a coastal area where roads are not good. There is a need to provide reliable, frequent and fast services that connect seamlessly into the rest of the rail network. This is important for those working in the energy sector, whether transitioning in the transitioning oil and gas sector, offshore wind or nuclear. They require that workforce regular and reliable transport to the area. Strong rail services are also crucial to meeting net zero, and there is increasingly the opportunity to return freight to the railways from over-congested roads. There are opportunities to do this on both lines, from the port of Lowestoft and taking an enormous amount of materials to the proposed Sizewell C power station, to which there is a link to the East Suffolk line at Saxmundham. Stations must be attractive, functional and accessible, so as to help draw more customers. Several on the two lines are in need of upgrades, such as at Great Yarmouth. Stations and their surrounds can also be a focus for regeneration, and this is particularly the case at Lowestoft, where the station occupies a unique location in the town centre, and where the community rail partnerships, the Lowestoft Central Project and the Railway Heritage Trust have carried out considerable improvements to the station in recent years, with more work proposed. There are also exciting plans in the Town Improvement Plan as part of the Towns Fund bid to enhance the surrounding area and to make Station Square an attractive and desirable destination. Mr Deputy Speaker, thinking laterally, the railways can be a source of innovation. Perhaps these two lines could be pilots for alternative fuel trains from local low-carbon sources, such as hydrogen or bioethanol. Nationally, there has been significant investment in the rail network in recent years. On Tuesday, Her Majesty the Queen opened the new Elizabeth line. Construction of HS2 is well underway. Lines closed following the Beeching report are due to be reopened, and a significant investment is being made in ticketing services. These proposals are welcome, but it is important that they complement and connect into the whole rail network. There is a concern that the East Suffolk line and the Wherry line, which are respectively east of Ipswich and east of Norwich, are left out on a limb and are not properly incorporated into the rest of the national road network. They are not just branch lines, something out of the Titfield Thunderbolt, but they are vital economic arteries serving growing communities. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I shall provide a very brief summary of the two lines over the last 175 years. In 1844, Sir Samuel Morton Peto purchased Lowestoft Harbour and announced plans to construct the railway from Reedham to Lowestoft. After gaining parliamentary approval, the Norfolk Railway obtained a lease to construct the line, and work commenced in 1846 with the Lowestoft to Norwich line opening to goods traffic, as I said, on 3rd May 1847. Following the arrival of the railway, Lowestoft grew rapidly, with the railway developing and operating the fish market, the harbour and the South Pier, as well as a number of rail-related manufacturing supply networks, including the Harbour Engineering Works, the Sleeper Depot and a concrete products factory. In addition, in the south of the town, there was a network of freight lines serving shipyards and factories. Morton Peto also developed much of Victorian Lowestoft, which became a fashionable resort, which was likewise served by the railway. By the 1920s, Lowestoft was the busiest port owned and operated by the Great Eastern Railway. The gradual decline of the railway network in East Suffolk and East Norfolk probably started in 1963 with the publication of the Beeching Report, which initially recommended closure of the East Suffolk line. However, in 1966, the line was reprieved from closure following a successful campaign led by the East Suffolk Travel Association, that's ESTA, which is still going strong and of which I am a member. In 1970, despite local opposition, the direct line between Lowestoft and Yarmouth South Town was closed, and in 1973, the transportation of fish by rail from Lowestoft also came to an end. This was followed in 1984 by the ending of direct through services from Liverpool Street to Lowestoft, and in 1992, despite local opposition, the concourse roof at Lowestoft Station was removed, though there are now exciting plans to reinstate a lightweight version. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the good news is that this decline in the latter part of the 20th century has been reversed in the first 2 decades of the 21st century. The Beccles Loop was constructed on the East Suffolk line, which enabled an hourly service to Ipswich to be reintroduced from late 2012. In the subsequent 10 years, passenger numbers have doubled. In 2013, a new bus interchange facility was built at Lowestoft Station. Local community groups have come together to upgrade facilities at stations, as previously mentioned, at Lowestoft and at Campsie Ash, and also at Beccles, where there is a need for accessibility improvements, as there is now also at Halesworth. The most notable improvement occurred in 2019, when Greater Anglia introduced a brand new fleet of trains across their network, thereby dispelling East Anglia's unwanted reputation as an elephant's graveyard, where old trains that other regions no longer wanted came to see out their final days in service. The new bimodal fleet are more comfortable, they have more seats, they have good accessibility with low floors and retractable steps, and they have full Wi-Fi. Further improvements have taken place since, including a £60 million investment in re-signalling the Wherry line and the reopening of the freight sidings at Lowestoft, from where since 2020 aggregates brought into the adjoining port have been transported to the Midlands. Recently, Network Rail have announced plans to refurbish the historic swing bridges at Alton Broad, Somerleyton and Reedham, and as mentioned, EDF are working up plans with Network Rail for as much material and aggregates as possible that are required for the construction of Sizewell C, which is a nationally important strategic infrastructure project to be brought in by rail. Mr. Deputy Speaker, these upgrades are welcome and they provide a good foundation on which to improve the two lines still further so that they can make an enduring contribution to the local economy. However, there is a concern that with a focus on major projects elsewhere, the two lines could be overlooked. The fact that the 2016 franchise commitment to reintroduce a through service from Lowestoft to Liverpool Street has been dropped from the new contract that Greater Anglia signed with the Department for Transport last September has come as a major disappointment to many. So as not to lose momentum, I would suggest the following issues need to be addressed. Firstly, Whilst not actually on these two lines, the upgrading of Hawley Junction on the Great Eastern Line and the improvements at Ely Junction will have a beneficial knock-on impact that will cascade right across East Anglia. They will not only increase capacity, but they will also facilitate the transfer of freight from road to rail. These projects must be included in the forthcoming rail network enhancement pipeline, and I know that colleagues from across the three counties of Suffolk, Norfolk and Cambridgeshire will be repeating these requests to my honourable friend the Minister in the coming days. Secondly, services on the East Suffolk and Wherry lines must properly connect into the national rail network. This means not only the aforementioned through service to Liverpool Street, which initially could be trialled on a weekend seasonal basis, but also improved connections to the Queen Elizabeth line at Shenfield and Stratford, to Cambridge, to Stansted, and ultimately linking into the East-West rail project from Cambridge to Oxford. Thirdly, the speed of the services must be reviewed. We now have faster trains, but they cannot go any quicker because of track constraints such as single-line sections and level crossings and historic speed restrictions. The new trains are more powerful and can accelerate and decelerate quicker, and this should be reflected in the timetables, which should be reviewed. Whilst it is important not to take any risks with safety, in the short term, Network Rail should be given more flexibility to make small-scale improvements under normal operator maintenance renewal works, rather than having to go through the rail network enhancing pipeline process, which is cumbersome and which is better suited to major large-scale projects, not to local quick-win initiatives. In the longer term, journey times could be reduced further if level crossings are upgraded or closed and line speeds increased. Feasibility studies should be carried out that look into this issue in detail and come up with an agreed strategy for which we can then seek funding. The studies should also consider the reliability of rail infrastructure. The Wherry line was closed in February due to flooding at Haddiscoe, and work should be carried out to mitigate against this. There are also along both lines assets that are in need of renewal through Network Rail Control Periods 7. Fourthly, it is necessary to improve the frequency of services along both lines. It is clear that more regular services stimulate greater use. The hourly service on the East Suffolk line, which has resulted from the construction of the Beccles Loop, has proved incredibly popular. As part of the aforementioned studies, research should be carried out so as to ascertain what infrastructure improvements are necessary to enable half-hourly services to be introduced on both lines. This may involve the construction of further passing loops, which could also facilitate greater freight use, whether to Sizewell or from Lowestoft Port, or possibly in due course from the sugar beet factory at Cantley. On the East Suffolk line, there is the possibility of further passing loops to the south to facilitate through services to Liverpool Street, and to the north to enable the introduction of that half-hourly service. Fifthly, in the longer term, the siting of stations and whether all trains should stop at all stations should be reviewed. In the Lowestoft area, it might be appropriate to consider having one consolidated station at Alton Broad to serve the significant amount of residential development proposed in the immediately surrounding area, and to also consider a station at Carlton Colville, where there has been significant development in recent years and where the line runs close to Suffolk Wildlife Trust's increasingly popular Carlton Marshes Visitor Centre. The opportunities for promoting tourism should be fully considered.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I'll give way to my honourable friend.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. My parliamentary neighbour, indeed, driving from Diss in my constituency to Ditchingham in my constituency, just east of Bungay in his. I think I crossed the Norfolk-Suffolk border 4 times, and I'm very familiar with his area. I should declare a further interest in that my grandfather lived in Lowestoft when I was a child. My great-grandfather took him to the coast. He took my father took me, and I take my sons there. I'm familiar with the area. But in addition to the extraordinary growth in leisure use of local rail services, which I experience myself to this day, and it's sometimes on the weekend quite difficult to get a seat, will he agree with me that the biggest impression we should leave with the Minister today is the point that he made about the vital economic arteries serving growing local communities and the capacity for East Anglia to grow and make a growing contribution to the national economy, given our size, our scope, our availability of land, will only be enhanced if we get the investment that we need, that the commitment that was dropped for the Lowestoft to Liverpool Street service should be reversed, and that we'd like to see the Department for Transport put pressure on for that, and that the upside potential for this region is extraordinary if only we get the investment.
I agree entirely with my honourable friend for the points that he's made. This is East Anglia has enormous potential to add to the local national economy, and investment in rail will facilitate that. My sixth point is to think innovatively and out of the box. And whilst it's very early days, we could perhaps consider pilots for trains fuelled by low carbon fuels, such as hydrogen generated at Sizewell or the use of bioethanol from sugar beet at Cantley. Finally, there are two pernickety points that must also be addressed. Firstly, the local community are doing great work in restoring Lowestoft Station and its surrounds, but this work can move forward significantly if the disused and dilapidated building at the rear of the station is made available to East Suffolk Council so that they can bring forward plans for bringing it back into use. I understand that Network Rail have agreed to this, but the matter has been dragging on for some time. And secondly, a few years ago on the Wherry line, improvements were carried out at Alton Broadnorth to reduce the time that the level crossing barriers are down across Bridge Road and traffic builds up on either side of the crossing. The re-signalling of the line has led to the barriers being down for longer, and this is increasing congestion. Network Rail are working to resolve this problem, but the matter has been going on for some time. Mr Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I would highlight the lead role that the East Suffolk and Wherry lines can play in levelling up across coastal East Anglia so that our area is well placed to take advantage of the opportunities emerging in renewable energy, tourism and hospitality and a revised fishing industry. And I urge the Minister to do all she can to get approval for the Hawley and Ely Junction upgrades and to commission the feasibility studies into route and service upgrades along both the East Suffolk and the Wherry lines. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start by congratulating and thanking my honourable friend, the member for Waveney, for securing this debate this evening on the East Suffolk and Wherry railway lines, and also for the contribution made by my honourable friend, the member for South Norfolk too. My honourable friend raised a number of points. I will endeavour to cover as many of them as I possibly can in the time I have, Mr Deputy Speaker. However, rest assured I was sitting and listening very carefully to his contribution. But I'd first like to just recognise that I know that the Honourable Member recently unveiled a mural at Lowestoft Railway Station that was installed by the Wherry Lines Community Rail Partnership and the Lowestoft Central Project to commemorate 175 years since the arrival of the railway to Lowestoft with the Norwich Lowestoft Wherry Lines Railway. The arrival of the railway brought enormous growth and prosperity to the town, as we've heard today, attracting major industry in addition to facilitating trading links through the port and the creation of a seaside resort. And the railway still plays a crucial role for the local community and economy, providing that connectivity for residents and visitors to the town. And I do understand the importance, Mr Deputy Speaker, of the routes to Lowestoft and the connectivity that they provide across the wider area, which is vital to facilitating the region's development and further economic growth. With the growth of various industries, including green energy and tourism in Lowestoft, I also appreciate the importance of convenient transport with regards to the government's levelling up agenda. I've heard during this debate a request for direct services from Lowestoft to Liverpool Street, and I do recognise the importance and the helpfulness of direct rail services into London. But I'd just like to explain that there are a number of other factors under consideration to facilitate this on the route between London, Liverpool Street and Lowestoft. The introduction of new direct services requires that there is sufficient capacity on the route to allow the service to operate in a manner that will not adversely impact upon the performance and operation of other services along the route. I understand that Greater Anglia has considered the introduction of a direct service to Lowestoft, but have regrettably concluded in the past that it was not feasible to implement at the time due to operational infrastructure and timetable factors. Members will know that the Great Eastern Main Line is very congested with a lack of space for extra services. Additionally, the East Suffolk line is constrained by single line sections and many level crossings, as we've heard today. The introduction of new services needs to be done in a way that does not adversely affect performance and create delays. That said, I have asked officials at the department to request that Greater Anglia continues to look for opportunities to introduce a direct service in the future. On a more positive note, I'm pleased that Greater Anglia is partway through its full fleet replacement programme, with all of its new Stadler trains in services on the rural routes from Norwich and Ipswich and to Lowestoft. And these new trains really have delivered a significant improvement for customers. They're more comfortable, they provide more seats. They have much improved accessibility with low floors and retractable seats. It's not even seats, steps, Mr. Deputy Speaker, retractable steps. The Lowestoft regional trains connect into the new Stadler intercity trains. Additionally, Great Anglia is partway through its rollout of new Alstom trains, with 63 out of the 133 5-carriage trains now in service across the region. Again, providing customers with a much improved journey experience, with many more seats, air conditioning, Wi-Fi and power points. On another positive note, operational performance on the East Suffolk and Wherry lines has been very strong, with public performance measure levels of 95% for the Ipswich Lowestoft services and 97% for the Norwich Lowestoft services in the most recent rail period. In fact, the Anglia route had among the best on-time performance across the country in the last financial year. Looking back at improvements on this route, I do recognise the importance of the completion of the Beccles Loop 10 years ago now, which allowed the hourly service to commence from Ipswich to Lowestoft. And this important investment, part funded by Suffolk County Council, made a significant improvement to the timetable and provided a real alternative to road journeys. Building on this, in 2020, over 130 years of signalling history on the Wherry lines entered a new era. I can see my honourable friend nodding there. When the new signalling system was commissioned following completion of work to introduce a new computerised signalling system, improving the reliability of train services. Victorian mechanical signals, which had been in place for over 130 years, were replaced with a modern computer-based system. And as part of the project, a number of level crossings were also upgraded to improve crossing safety. Despite the strong performance, the railway cannot be complacent, and we must continue to improve and invest. Network Rail continues to maintain and improve the rail infrastructure, and I understand that this autumn, Network Rail will upgrade a number of important bridges in the region on the Wherry line. The work on the swing bridges at Oulton Broad, Summer Leighton, and Reedham will improve reliability for rail passengers and reduce disruption for boat users. Beginning this autumn, Network Rail engineers will upgrade the internal components of the 3 bridges, and it's thought that the internal components of the 3 swing bridges haven't been replaced in more than 100 years, dating back to 1905, and they require more frequent and costly maintenance. The upgrades will reduce the need for maintenance, ensuring the bridges will be able to operate more reliably throughout the year for rail passengers. This will also benefit river traffic by providing more reliable access to the local waterways, helping to support the local economy, especially through the busy summer tourist season. I'd like to just quickly take the opportunity to mention the recent Great British Railways sale to help passengers facing the rising cost of living. This was a scheme that we launched, and the Great British Rail sale offered up to 50% off more than 1 million tickets on journeys across Britain. It was targeted at leisure travellers, and the reason I mention this is that as part of the sale, tickets from Lowestoft to London were just which is incredible good value for money. Delivering for customers is of course essential. It's always good to see innovative projects to improve passenger experience when using our railway. So I was pleased to learn about the Catch On Demand electric bus scheme, which I understand has been extended to the end of 2022. And this taxi bus route launched in the spring of 2021 as a 12-month pilot connecting the Wickham Market rail station, Wickham Market Village and Framlingham on the East Suffolk line. It's great to see how this really important innovation for local transport can, I think, really improve the passenger experience, and it provides bookable transport through a mobile app or by telephone, but with fares that are in line with a bus service. And this is exactly the sort of initiative that is a really meaningful way to connect with local communities, to people and places, and shows the important role that our railway has moving forward. Just conscious of time, Mr Deputy Speaker, I wanted to remind honourable friends and colleagues that next week is Community Rail Week, and I'd like to pay tribute to the team of volunteers who work with the community rail partnerships on this route. The East Suffolk Lines and Wherry Lines Group provide great links between local communities, stations and partners from the rail industry. And as an example of the work they do, the mural I mentioned earlier, which the Honourable Member for Waveney unveiled, was installed by the Wherry Lines Community Rail Partnership and the Lowestoft Central Project, which both the Wherry and East Suffolk Lines groups were involved in. And I know these partnerships are always looking for ways to improve their stations, the environment, the train services, and they're always trying to raise the profile of our railways. In fact, I'm hoping to visit in a different part of the country, but a community rail project next week. So in closing, I'd just like to end by saying I absolutely recognise the importance of the East Suffolk and Wherry railway lines. The new trains that have been rolled out on these lines really have delivered improvements and benefits for customers, but we shouldn't stop there. We should continue to look for opportunities to deliver further improvements to the infrastructure and our railways in the region.
Yeah.